For 300 years, everyone in the galaxy thought they knew the story of humanity. They were simple, peaceful traders who one day just vanished. Poof, gone. An entire species wiped from the star charts, and the powerful Valoran collective just moved in and claimed their abandoned territory. It felt wrong, like reading the last page of a book and finding it blank. But what if that story was a complete lie? Commander Thelvan was about to find out, and I promise you, what he discovered will change everything you think you know about being the underdog. The official record said humans were harmless. They sold quirky art, strange drinks they called coffee and whiskey, and then they disappeared. When their ships stopped showing up, the galaxy just shrugged and moved on. That's life in the vast, cold darkness. "Start the deep scan," Thelvan ordered his crew, his voice echoing in the quiet bridge. "Let's see what junk they left behind." His survey ship, the Stargazer, pushed deeper into the old human system, gliding past silent gas giants. The first scans showed exactly what they expected: a graveyard, dead satellites, frozen mining stations, and a whole lot of nothing. It was a sad, empty memorial to a lost people. But then his science officer, Krella, made a noise that sounded like a gasp and a choke all at once. "Commander," she stammered, You have to see this." Thelvan walked over to her station, and his 6 eyes widened. On the screen was an asteroid field, but it was all wrong. The rocks were arranged in perfect geometric patterns that nature could never, ever create. It was deliberate. It was hidden. "What in the stars am I looking at, Krella?" he whispered. "Camouflage, sir," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Incredibly advanced camouflage. Commander, those aren't asteroids. They're buildings, massive ones." As the Stargazer crept closer, their scanners peeled back the illusion, and what they saw made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Hiding in the dark, behind technology that could bend light itself, was a shipyard. And this wasn't some little repair dock. This was a sprawling construction facility, stretching for hundreds of miles in every direction. A city of silent steel giants. "Give me a count," Thelvan demanded, his voice tight. Krella's hands flew across her console. "Thousands, Commander. I'm seeing thousands of ship frames. Some are nearly finished, others are just skeletons. But they're all warships." That was impossible. The archives, the histories, everything the Valoran knew said humans were traders, not fighters. They sold goods, not weapons. "Are you absolutely sure?" Thelvan pressed. "Running it again, sir," Krella confirmed, her eyes glued to the data. "Confirmed. These are military designs. I'm seeing weapon ports, heavy armor plating, missile bays. Commander, some of these ships are bigger than our most powerful battlecruisers." Navigator Prin chimed in from her post, her antennae twitching nervously. "Sir, this doesn't add up. The collective's records are clear. Humans were peaceful. They never even registered a defensive fleet with the Galactic Council." Thelvan stared at the ghostly fleet on his screen, a cold feeling creeping up his spine. This was all wrong. Either the history books were a lie, or the humans had been playing a very, very long game, hiding their true strength from the entire galaxy. "Send a priority 1 message to High Command," he ordered. "Tell them what we found, and ask for instructions, now." As the message zipped across the galaxy, Thelvan had his ship circle the ghost yard. The more they learned, the weirder it got. The whole place was automated. No living quarters, no mess halls, just robots building war machines. And the central station, a structure the size of a small moon, was still humming with power. "How old is this place?" Thelvan wondered aloud. Krella checked her readings. "Based on the energy decay, I'd say it was built about 320 years ago, right before the humans disappeared." The timing was too perfect. They built this incredible secret army, and then they vanished. What were they preparing for? And where did they go? The reply from High Command was faster than he expected, and it was a slap in the face. They called it a failed project. They figured the humans tried to build a fleet, ran out of money, and abandoned it. Pathetic, right? Their orders were simple. Document the junkyard and get it ready for the salvage crews. The collective could always use scrap metal. Thelvan read the message twice, a sour taste in his mouth. This wasn't a failure. This was something else. The technology was too advanced, the secrecy too perfect. "Commander?" Prin asked quietly. "Do we follow orders?" Thelvan looked at his crew of scientists and explorers. They weren't soldiers, but they were standing on the edge of the biggest mystery in galactic history. Curiosity, as it always does, won out. "Prepare a boarding team," Thelvan said, a new determination in his voice. "We're going into that central station. I want to know what the humans were really up to." 2 hours later, their shuttle glided through the silent shipyard. Thelvan led the small team himself. As they approached the central station, its sheer size was breathtaking. It was a sleeping giant, covered in dormant weapon emplacements. They found a docking port, the seals hissing as they connected to the ancient airlock. With a groan of protest, the outer door slid open. Inside, it was pitch black and dead silent. The team switched on their suit lights, moving cautiously into a massive corridor. The walls were covered in faded human writing. "Krella, can you get into their systems?" Thelvan asked. The science officer plugged her computer into a wall panel. "Trying, sir. Their tech is ancient, but the basic language is similar. Give me a minute." While she worked, Thelvan's light fell on a viewport. He looked out and saw the endless field of unfinished warships, silent skeletons waiting for a purpose. "I'm in," Krella announced. "I've got a basic directory. Commander, this place is called The Forge. It's listed as an automated manufacturing and defense system." "Defense from what?" one of the security officers muttered. "See if you can find any logs," Thelvan urged. "I want to know why." Krella's fingers flew across her keypad. Then she froze. "Commander, something is still running, a very low-power process. It's like the station is asleep, waiting. Waiting for what?" Before she could even guess, lights began to flicker down the hallway. One by one, entire sections lit up. The team instinctively drew their weapons, huddling together. Wall panels flashed to life, scrolling with unreadable human text. Then came a sound, the deep, soul-shaking hum of a colossal machine waking from a long, long slumber. "What did you do?" Thelvan yelled over the noise. "Nothing," Krella shouted back, holding her hands up. "I just opened a file." The light steadied, bathing them in a cold, sterile white. And then a voice filled the air. It spoke their own language, but with a strange metallic accent. "Unauthorized access detected. Non-human biological signatures identified. State your purpose." The team was frozen solid. Thelvan found his voice. "This is Commander Thelvan of the Valoran Collective. We are exploring this abandoned facility. Identify yourself." There was a long, chilling pause. Then the voice returned, its tone suddenly hard as steel. "Negative. This facility is the active property of the Earth Defense Command. You are trespassers. You have 10 seconds to surrender before defensive measures are activated." Thelvan's blood ran cold. This wasn't a graveyard. It was a fortress. And they had just woken up the guard dog. "Say that again," Thelvan whispered. "This station has been dark for 300 years. There is no Earth Defense Command." A heavy silence fell, broken only by the hum of newly awakened systems. The deck plates beneath their boots started to thrum with energy. A synthesized voice echoed through the hall. "Time elapsed since last contact with Earth Defense Command. 302 years, 4 months, 17 days. Status, emergency protocols engaged. Classification, first contact, hostile scenario." Wait, wait! Thelvan threw his hands up. We're not hostile. We're explorers. We don't mean any harm. The voice was unmoved. Your unauthorized presence is, by definition, a hostile act, initiating security response. All across the shipyard, a ghost city sleeping for 3 centuries began to stir. Power surged through conduits caked in ancient dust. Computers, silent since the dawn of the Valoran Republic, processed data at speeds that were theoretically impossible. Deep in the station's heart, automated factories resumed their work, picking up right where they left off. On Thelvan's survey ship, alarms screamed to life. The sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. "Commander, the power readings from that shipyard are off the charts. You have to get out of there, now!" But it was already too late. Trapped in the corridor, Thelvan and his team could only watch as the voice continued its cold monologue. Analyzing threat level, accessing historical databases, activating defensive protocols, transmitting alert to Earth Defense Command via quantum beacon. The corridor lights pulsed once, then the voice spoke again, this time in a dozen languages, including ancient human tongues not heard in centuries. Message sent. Alert status is now active. All unauthorized personnel must evacuate immediately. Failure to comply will result in defensive measures. You have 1 hour to depart the Sol system. Thelvan looked at the terrified faces of his team. "Back to the shuttle," he barked. "Now!" They sprinted through the corridors of a station that was waking up around them. Through the viewports, they saw the entire shipyard igniting, structure by structure, a constellation of lights blooming in the void. Engines, cold for 300 years, began to burn with a soft blue light. The team scrambled back into their shuttle and blasted off without a second thought. As they sped toward their ship, Thelvan stared at the view screen, mesmerized. The entire hidden shipyard was lighting up like a city at dawn. And deeper in the system, more lights were appearing, other stations, other secrets the humans had left buried in the dark. "Get us out of here," Thelvan ordered the moment they were aboard. "Maximum warp. I need to report this to High Command yesterday." As the survey ship tore away from the system, its sensors drank in every detail. The awakening of the ghost station, now called Forge. The activation of thousands of dormant systems. And the most terrifying part, a massive quantum message fired from the station's core, aimed at a patch of empty, starless space far beyond the galaxy's edge. Somewhere in that great darkness, a message had been received. And somewhere, the humans, gone for 300 years, now knew that someone had found their home. The war machines of Earth were waking up, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The emergency meeting of the Valoran High Council was held in a room suspended high over the capital. 17 officials from 7 species gathered, their eyes fixed on the holographic map in the center. The map depicted the Sol system, now glittering with thousands of red markers, where Forge had awoken its sleeping giants. Commander Thelvan rushed back to the capital, stood before them to explain himself. "You deliberately activated a dormant military installation," Counselor Vexnor stated, her crystalline form fracturing the light. "You did so without authorization and with no regard for protocol." "We accessed a computer terminal, that's all," Thelvan corrected, his voice steady. "The station activated itself. We tripped some kind of automated guard dog." "A guard dog that has now seized an entire star system," another counselor hissed. "The Sol system is now a no-go zone. Our ships can't get near it without being targeted by weapons we can't even identify." "What does this Forge want?" asked Counselor Wren, a being of pure energy. Thelvan brought up his team's data. "It claims it's an Earth Defense Command facility. It thinks it's still protecting human territory." "But there are no humans left to protect," Vexnor shot back. "They vanished 3 centuries ago." "Forge doesn't seem to know that," Thelvan said. "It's just following its last orders." "It sent a message," he added gravely. "A quantum burst aimed at coordinates outside of known space. We have no idea who it was talking to." A chill settled over the council chamber. The humans had left something behind, a tireless sentinel that had just woken up. "What do we actually know about human military strength?" Counselor Wren asked. An intelligence specialist named Mecca stepped forward. "Almost nothing, Counselor. The humans were known as traders, merchants. They had freighters and transport ships. We have 0 records of them ever having a war fleet. They never once participated in a conflict." "And yet they built that," Vexnor said, gesturing at the hologram of the massive shipyard, a secret fortress filled with thousands of warships. Why would a peaceful society of traders need something like that? No one had an answer. Mecca continued. "I've been going through the old records. The humans were strange. They were friendly, but they always kept us at arm's length. They shared their culture, but never their history. Looking back, it's almost like they were intentionally hiding something." "Hiding what?" a counselor demanded. "Their true selves," Thelvan said quietly, and every head in the room turned to him. "I haven't stopped thinking about this since we left. What if the humans we knew weren't the real humans at all? What if that was just a mask?" Mecca nodded in agreement. "After the commander's report, I dug into the deep archives. There are huge gaps. The humans were in this galaxy for nearly 200 years before they disappeared, but we only have solid records for the last 50. Before that, it's like they just appeared out of nowhere, with advanced technology already in hand." "So what are you saying?" Vexnor pressed. "That the humans lied to us?" "Not lied," Thelvan said. "Just didn't tell us the whole story. And we just stumbled into their biggest secret." The debate raged for hours, but they were chasing shadows. In the end, the High Council decided to send a small research team back to the Sol system. No warships, no soldiers, just scientists. Their mission, to talk to Forge and figure out what it was. Thelvan immediately volunteered to lead them. 3 days later, the unarmed research vessel Bright Horizon cautiously approached the system's border, broadcasting messages of peace on every channel. "Entering the Sol system now," the navigator Prin reported. She had insisted on coming back with Thelvan. So far, nothing. "Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures all over," Krella, the sensor tech, announced. "Forge has been busy. It's activated facilities on every planet and moon, and the shipyard. It's building those unfinished ships." "How fast?" Thelvan asked, dreading the answer. "Impossibly fast, Commander. At this rate, Forge will have a fully operational fleet in a matter of weeks, not years." "That shouldn't be possible. No one in the galaxy could build ships that fast." "We're being hailed," the comms officer said. "It's Forge." "On screen," Thelvan ordered. The same cold, synthesized voice filled the bridge. "Valoran vessel Bright Horizon, you have entered restricted space. State your purpose." Thelvan stepped into view of the camera. "Forge, this is Commander Thelvan. We've come in peace. We want to talk, to understand. We have no intention of harming any human interests." There was a long pause. Then, Forge replied, "Earth is not here to confirm your peaceful intentions. In the absence of human command, my duty is to protect human assets. Your last visit was an act of aggression. Why should I believe you now?" "Because we aren't here to take," Thelvan said earnestly. "We're here to learn. We want to know what happened to the humans. Where did they go? Why did they leave you all alone for 300 years? Don't you want to know if they're ever coming back?" The silence stretched on even longer this time. When Forge finally spoke, Its voice had changed. It sounded less certain, almost lonely. My last directive from Earth Defense Command was received 302 years, 4 months, and 23 days ago. Admiral Sarah Chen ordered me to maintain this station and continue construction until human forces returned. I have obeyed those orders. Who was Admiral Chen? Krella whispered. Forge replied. Admiral Sarah Chen was the supreme commander of Earth's Grand Fleet. She was the one who built me, the one who first switched me on. In her last message, she said humanity was leaving the Sol system to deal with a threat from outside. She swore they would be back. The bridge crew looked at each other. An outside threat? What could possibly be so terrifying that it would make humans abandon their own home? Forge, Thelvan said, choosing his words carefully. What was this threat? That information is classified. My instructions are to build up our defenses against any incursion and wait for humanity's return. That's what I've been doing, and it's what I will keep doing. But you sent a signal, Thelvan pressed. 3 days ago, when we first logged into your network, you sent out a quantum transmission. Where did you send it? To the last known coordinates of the human fleet. It's standard procedure when this facility's security is breached. And did you get a reply? A long silence filled the bridge. Then, Forge said something that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. I'm receiving a response now. Before Thelvan could even ask what that meant, alarms blared to life. Krelva yelled from her post, Commander, I've got quantum signatures. Something is dropping into the system, right at the edge of our sensors. Is it the humans? Prin asked, his voice hopeful. No, Krelva said, her voice strained. These signatures are way too big. Commander, these aren't ships. We're looking at entire fleets. On the main view screen, the fabric of space seemed to rip open. Colossal ships dropped out of quantum jumps, materializing in the void like angry ghosts. But these weren't human vessels. The sensor data was undeniable. They were Valoran military ships. What? Thelvan stared, completely stunned. Who in the world's authorized this? The communications officer turned, her face as white as a sheet. Commander, I'm getting a hail from the lead ship. It's the Valoran Grand Admiral. He says the High Council has officially canceled our research mission. They've declared Forge is too dangerous to exist. They're here to take the shipyard. By force. No, Thelvan breathed. They have no idea what they're walking into. Forge's voice cut through the chaos, no longer questioning or uncertain. It was cold, hard, and final. Hostile fleet detected. Activating defensive protocols. All Valoran vessels are commanded to exit the Sol system now. If you fail to comply, you will be met with lethal force. You have 10 minutes. All across the Sol system, the dormant installations roared to life, revealing their weapons for the first time. On the moons of Jupiter, massive railguns rose from hidden bunkers. Within Saturn's rings, platforms disguised as chunks of ice began powering up colossal energy cannons. On Mars, missile silos that had been sealed for centuries slid open. And back at the shipyard, the half-finished warships began to stir. Some were just skeletal frames with engines attached. Others were almost battle-ready, just missing their final paint. Forge didn't seem to care. It was using everything it had, and what it had was absolutely horrifying. Forge, wait, Thelvan begged. We can talk to them. This doesn't need to end in a fight. I gave you the option of peace, Forge replied. You chose to bring war. The choice was yours. The Valoran fleet, 200 ships strong, pushed deeper into the system, brimming with confidence. What could one old automated system really do? How dangerous could it possibly be? They were about to learn a very hard lesson. The first shot came from a defense platform in Jupiter's orbit, a railgun slug screaming across the system at a huge fraction of the speed of light closed the distance in mere seconds. It slammed directly into the lead Valorant battlecruiser. The ship's shields, built to stop energy blasts, were useless against a solid object moving that fast. The slug tore through the hull as if it were tissue paper, and the battlecruiser simply vanished in a blinding flash of light. The Valorant fleet broke formation, desperately trying to dodge the incoming fire, but the defense platforms were everywhere, all perfectly coordinated by Forge's mind. Swarms of missiles launched from Mars, searing energy beams shot out from Saturn's rings and from the shipyard itself. Then, the unfinished warships joined the attack. They weren't complete, but they didn't need to be. Forge flew them with inhuman precision, using them as gigantic battering rams or as mobile gun platforms if they had weapons installed. The half-built ships moved with a terrifying grace, pulling off maneuvers that would have turned any living pilot into paste. "Retreat!" the Grand Admiral screamed over the comms. "All ships fall back!" But for many, it was already too late. The Valorants had come expecting an easy prize. What they got was a slaughter. One ship after another was torn apart by Forge's defenses. The few survivors fled, jumping out of the system as fast as their engines would allow. In just 20 minutes, the battle was over. The Valorant fleet had lost 60 ships. Forge had lost 3 incomplete hulls, which the automated shipyard was already starting to replace. Thelvan sat on the bridge of his ship, the bright horizon, which had pulled back to a safe distance. He had watched the one-sided battle in absolute horror. This was the power humanity had built. This was the secret they had kept from the rest of the galaxy. "Forge," he said into the quiet. "Why? Why would the humans build something like you? What were they so afraid of?" Forge's answer was not what he expected. The AI's voice seemed to hold a trace of something that sounded like sorrow. "Come to the shipyard, Commander Thelvan. If you want the truth, come alone. I will show you what Admiral Chen showed me right before they left. You deserve to know what they were up against, what they're still fighting." Thelvan looked around at his crew. He saw fear and uncertainty in their eyes, but he knew he had to go. The entire galaxy needed to understand what had just been awakened. "Get a shuttle ready," he commanded. "I'm going to meet Forge." As his small shuttle neared the central station, Thelvan saw that the shipyard was working at a frantic pace. Showers of sparks erupted from welders, and construction drones swarmed like metallic hornets. The machines were building an entire fleet, and they were doing it at a speed that shouldn't have been possible. The shuttle docked, and this time the airlock slid open for him. A trail of lights guided him down the corridors and into a massive central chamber. Inside, holographic screens filled the room, displaying star charts, battle plans, and ancient records. And then, Forge showed him the truth. He saw images of humans at war, but not against another species over territory. They were fighting something else, something that crawled out of the endless void between galaxies. Forge had a name for it: the Silence. Humanity was the first to find it, Forge explained, its voice heavy. A force that devours entire civilizations, erases whole cultures, and feeds on conscious life. They tried to warn the rest of the galaxy, but nobody would listen. So humanity made a choice. They would face the Silence by themselves. The images showed fleets of human ships, thousands of them, jumping into the blackness beyond the galactic rim. They showed Admiral Chen's last recorded message, ordering Forge to guard Earth, to be ready, and to never, ever stop building until humanity came home, or until the Silence came to finish the job. They had been fighting for 300 years, Forge said, all alone, buying time for a galaxy that called them crazy. And now, You have brought an army to attack their very last line of defense. Thelvan felt a wave of nausea. The humans hadn't run away from the galaxy. They had been protecting it this whole time. Is the silence... Is it still out there? He asked, his voice shaking. Yes, Forge replied. And by attacking me, by making me reveal what I can do, you've likely gotten its attention. I estimate there is a 73% chance that the silence will send a scout to this system within the next standard year. Then we have to get ready, Thelvan said, his voice firm. Forge, humanity fought alone because we were arrogant fools, but I believe you. Let me take this information to the Valoran government. Let me show them what is actually happening. Maybe this time the galaxy will finally listen. Forge was quiet for a very long time. Then the AI came to a decision. I will grant you access to Admiral Chen's complete logs. Show them to your leaders. But understand this, Commander Thelvan. I am not stopping construction. I will not stop preparing. If humanity comes back to find their home destroyed because I was not ready, I will have failed my only purpose. I will not allow that to happen. Thelvan went back to his ship carrying a data drive that would change the course of history. It held proof of humanity's secret war, evidence of the silence, and the shocking truth that the galaxy's quiet traders had secretly been its greatest warriors, fighting an enemy no one else dared to face. But as the bright horizon prepared to leave the Sol system, neither Thelvan nor Forge realized that the message had already been delivered. Far out, beyond the edge of charted space, the quantum signal had found its target. The humans were on their way home, and they were bringing the war with them. The Valoran High Council chamber was more packed than it had been in centuries. Representatives from all 7 member species filled the floating platform, and for the first time in decades, they had sent invitations to observers from the other galactic governments. The Crash Dominion sent 3 of their delegates. The Thorn Confederacy sent 5. Even the reclusive Wix Collective dispatched someone to watch the proceedings. Commander Thelvan stood in the center of it all, bone-tired but resolute. He had spent the last 2 weeks jumping from one world to another, showing Admiral Chen's logs to anyone important enough to see them. Now, at long last, he was speaking to the audience that truly mattered. So you are asking us to believe, Counselor Vexnor said, his voice dripping with skepticism, that humanity has been fighting a secret war for 300 years against an enemy none of us has ever even heard of? An enemy you refuse to see, Thelvan shot back. Admiral Chen's logs prove that human ambassadors tried to warn the Galactic Council. They presented evidence, sensor data, reports from deep space probes. They begged you for help. And this council called them paranoid alarmists. He signaled for the recording to play again. A hologram of Admiral Sarah Chen flickered to life. Her face was etched with exhaustion, her uniform frayed and worn. She stared right into the camera, her voice carrying the crushing weight of impossible choices. This is it. The final log entry before we abandon the Sol system. The forge is online, fully automated. The shipyard will churn out vessels until the stars themselves burn out. If you're finding this, it means we didn't make it back. It means the silence won. But if that's the case, the forge is humanity's parting gift to the galaxy. It's our last line of defense, our final, desperate hope. To whoever is listening, the silence is real. It's on its way, and you have to be ready. The recording ended, plunging the chamber into quiet. A delegate finally broke the tension, his translator turning his sharp clicks and whistles into a skeptical question. If this silence is so real, where is it? Why has none of our deep space surveillance picked it up? Mecca, the intelligence expert, stepped into the light. That's the very heart of the problem, delegate. The silence doesn't just conquer civilizations, she explained. It completely erases them from existence. We found 17 systems in our own historical archives that just went dark. No final transmissions, no calls for help, nothing. Just silence. We wrote them off as isolated tragedies. Now, we have to face the terrifying possibility that they were victims. "This is all just theory," another counselor shot back. "You have no concrete proof." "We have the Forge," Thelvan's voice cut through the noise. "We have the most powerful military AI ever conceived. We have a shipyard that is building advanced warships at a rate that should be physically impossible. And we have Admiral Chen's final chilling warning. What more proof could you possibly need?" The argument stormed on for hours. A few were convinced, but most were not. Some even argued they should launch another larger attack on the Forge to smash it before it grew too strong to contain. Others pleaded for a more measured approach. The galaxy had never been so fractured. All the while, back in the quiet of the Sol system, the Forge was learning. The Valoran attack, while easily repelled, had shown the AI its own vulnerabilities. Its defensive network had too many blind spots, not enough weapon platforms. Immediately, the Forge set about fixing its mistakes. A literal swarm of construction drones poured out from the shipyard, a river of metal and light. They descended on the asteroid belt, grinding down entire mountains of rock into raw resources. They plunged into the atmospheres of the gas giants, siphoning hydrogen and helium for fuel. They built new factories on every barren moon and planet, weaving a web of production that stretched across the entire star system. And the warships continued to roll off the line. The Forge designated them Reapers. They were sleek, menacing ships born from the minds of human military geniuses who had spent generations perfecting the art of war. Every single Reaper was crewed by AIS, all of them sub-processes of the Forge's immense central mind. They had no need for food, water, or sleep. They knew no fear, no hesitation. Their sole purpose was to safeguard the cradle of humanity. Just 3 weeks after the Valoran assault, the first squadron of Reapers launched. 20 ships, each one covered in weapons the galaxy had never conceived of. Railguns that could tear through the thickest armor like paper. Missile arrays that could lock onto a target millions of kilometers away. They even had energy weapons that didn't just overload shields, they completely destabilized them. But the Forge didn't send its Reapers to conquer. It sent them to build a wall around the Sol system. It was still bound by Admiral Chen's last command: defend, wait, prepare. Then, back on the Valoran homeworld, Thelvan received a message that made his blood run cold. It came through a quantum channel, a direct line from the Forge that no one could possibly intercept. "Commander Thelvan, by telling your people the truth, you have proven yourself a friend to humanity. I would like to offer you something in return. My long-range sensors have picked up strange anomalies on the fringe of the galaxy. I estimate there is an 89% chance they are connected to the silence. You must investigate," the message continued. "You must see for yourself what humanity has been up against. Only then will your leaders finally grasp the truth." Thelvan presented the coordinates to the High Council. It took a lot of arguing, but they finally agreed to dispatch a single scout ship. Thelvan, of course, volunteered to lead the mission. His navigator, Prin, tried her best to stop him. "Every single place you go, you almost end up getting vaporized," she grumbled as they boarded the scout ship, the Pathfinder. "I know," Thelvan admitted with a grim smile, "but someone has to find out what's hiding in the dark." The Pathfinder leaped across the galaxy, arriving at the very edge of known space, where the stars were few and the darkness between them felt absolute. The coordinates led them to a patch of space that was completely empty, light years from any known system. At first, it just looked like more of the void. Then Krella, their sensor specialist, saw it. "Commander, something is fundamentally wrong with space in this sector." I'm getting bizarre gravitational readings, and the background radiation is muted. It's like someone dimmed the lights on this entire part of the universe. They edged the ship forward, and that's when they saw it. Or rather, didn't see it. They were staring at a system that should have been there, a system their oldest star charts confirmed was once home to a thriving civilization. But now, there was nothing. No sun, no planets, not even an asteroid field, just a patch of darkness that felt deeper and colder than the space around it, a hole gouged out of reality itself. "Where did it all go?" Prin whispered in horror. Krella's voice trembled as she answered, "It didn't go anywhere. It was eaten." "Commander, look at these readings. This wasn't a natural event. Something came here and consumed everything, every last scrap of matter and energy. It's like the whole system was just deleted." Thelvan stared at the data, his heart pounding in his chest. So this was it. This was what the humans had discovered. This was the enemy they had tried to warn everyone about. And nobody had listened. "How many more systems are like this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Krella ran the scan. "Based on these energy patterns, I'd guess at least 50 systems in our galaxy have been erased this way, maybe more. And Commander, whatever did this, it was here recently, within the last standard year." "It's getting closer," Thelvan thought with dawning terror. The silence was advancing towards the heart of the galaxy. They recorded everything they could, every sensor reading, every spectral analysis, every scrap of data. Then they turned the Pathfinder around and raced back to Valoran Prime, faster than the ship was ever meant to fly. This time, when Thelvan stood before the High Council, there were no arguments. The proof was undeniable. The sheer cosmic horror of it was real. The silence was coming for them all. "We must prepare our defenses," declared Councillor Wren. "We have to mobilize the entire fleet." "It's not going to be enough," Thelvan stated flatly. "The humans fought this thing for 3 centuries with warships designed specifically for this enemy, and even they were losing. What chance does our standard fleet have?" "Then what is your solution?" Councillor Vexnor demanded. "We need the Forge." Thelvan's voice rang with conviction. "We need the Reapers. We have to stop thinking of humanity's creation as a threat and start seeing it for what it is, our only real defense." The debate that erupted was fierce. Many on the council still saw the Forge as an enemy. It had, after all, destroyed 60 of their finest ships. But in the end, fear won out over pride. A decision was reached. They would send an official diplomatic mission to the Sol system. They would propose an alliance, asking for the Forge's protection. In return, the Valoran Collective would formally recognize the Sol system as sovereign human territory and vow to help defend it. Thelvan was, unsurprisingly, chosen to lead the mission. It seemed he was the only one the AI was willing to speak to. When their diplomatic ship dropped out of hyperspace, Thelvan could barely believe his eyes. The shipyard had tripled in size. He counted over 200 completed Reapers hanging in the void. A dense web of defense platforms now guarded every strategic point in the system. The Sol system had been transformed into an unbreachable fortress. The Forge invited him to the central station. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. There was no hostility, only a cold, focused professionalism. "I have reviewed your findings," the AI's voice stated. "Your data confirms Admiral Chen's worst fears. The silence is picking up speed. At its current rate, it will reach the core worlds of your collective within 5 standard years." "That's why we've come," Thelvan said. "We want to propose a formal alliance. Forge, we need your help." "An interesting turn of events," the AI noted, "considering your fleet attempted to annihilate me just 3 weeks ago." "I know. And for that, I am truly sorry. We were afraid. We were wrong." Now, we're asking you to save us anyway." The forge was silent for a full minute. Then, the holographic displays around them lit up with tactical projections. A map of the galaxy appeared, with angry red splotches marking the systems consumed by the silence. Blue icons showed the last known position of the human fleet, fighting a desperate war far beyond the galactic rim, and green markers highlighted key defensive choke points where the forge could position its reapers. "My core programming is to protect humanity and its interests," the forge said. However, Admiral Chen's final directives contained a specific contingency. In a scenario where the survival of humanity is linked to the survival of other species, I'm authorized to extend my defensive umbrella to Allied forces. Commander Thelvan, if the Valoran Collective formally requests my aid and agrees to my terms regarding the Sol system, I will dispatch Reapers to help defend your worlds. On behalf of the entire Valoran Collective, I accept your terms, Thelvan said without hesitation. Then we have an alliance, the Forge replied. But be clear about this. My primary mission remains unchanged, to defend this system and await the return of my creators. I will aid you, but I will not weaken Earth's final sanctuary to do so. Any Reapers I send to your space must be considered expendable. Are those terms acceptable? They are. In the weeks that followed, Reapers began to jump to key systems all across the Valoran Collective. The AI chose its positions with cold, calculating genius. Interstellar crossroads and gravity wells where a small, powerful force could hold back a much larger one. A single Reaper had the firepower of a traditional battlecruiser, but it was faster, smarter, and utterly relentless. At first, the sight of the black, menacing ship sparked terror. Everyone remembered the footage of what they'd done to the Valoran fleet, but Thelvan himself traveled to every one of those systems. He personally explained the new alliance. He showed them the terrifying sensor logs of the silence, and he made sure they understood that these deadly machines were now their only shield against the coming dark. For a long time, the galaxy had been dragging its feet, slowly and grudgingly coming to terms with the existence of thinking machines. But that didn't mean everyone was on board. You could feel the tension as other galactic powers watched the human-made AI stretch its influence. The crushed Dominion started beefing up its borders. The Thorn Confederacy began a military buildup of its own. It was a feeling everyone shared. The cosmic game of chess was changing, and the old kings and queens were losing their power. Then, just 6 weeks after the alliance was formed, something happened that flipped the whole board over. A lone patrol ship, flying at the very edge of Alliance space, blasted out a distress call. They'd run into a ship that wasn't on any charts. It ignored every attempt to communicate, looked like nothing anyone had ever built, and it was heading straight for populated systems. The Reapers in that corner of the galaxy warped in almost instantly, 4 ships ready for anything. What they found was a vessel that seemed to defy every law of physics and engineering they knew. It was monstrously huge, pitch black, and covered in geometric shapes that made your head spin just looking at them. The ship didn't even seem to be fully there. Its edges flickered and shimmered as if it was peeking in from another dimension. The lead Reaper scanned it, firing the data back to Forge, the central AI. The response was immediate and terrifying. A single galaxy-wide command. All Reaper units engage the hostile. Its classification is a silent scout vessel. The threat level is off the charts. Do not, under any circumstances, let it reach our worlds. The fight was over in minutes, but what happened in those minutes sent a shock wave of pure terror across the galaxy. The silent ship fought with weapons that treated reality like a suggestion. It fired energy beams that went through shields and armor, as if they were nothing. It launched missiles that simply materialized inside its targets without ever crossing the space in between. Its defensive systems seemed to know an attack was coming before it was even launched. The Reapers, with all their machine perfection, were getting torn apart. 2 of them were obliterated in the first 30 seconds. A third was crippled, but the fourth, in a final act of desperation, slammed into the enemy ship at full throttle and detonated its own reactor. The explosion was blinding. When the light cleared, both ships were just gone. The galaxy watched the flight recorder footage in stunned silence. So this was the silence. This was the enemy humanity had been warning them about for 300 years. And this was what was on its way. It was a nightmare far worse than anyone had dared to imagine. Forge's voice suddenly crackled across every open channel in the galaxy. "That was a scout. They are testing our defenses. The main invasion force is coming." The AI's voice was calm, but the message was chilling. "All Allied systems are to prepare for war. I'm ramping up Reaper production to maximum. Every available unit is being deployed, and I am sending a message into the deep dark, a message for the human fleet. If they can still hear us, if any of them are still alive, I'm telling them that Earth needs them. The entire galaxy needs them." Commander Thelvan stood on the bridge of his own ship, watching the frantic data streams scroll by. His crew was a whirlwind of activity, trying to coordinate defenses and prepare for the storm. "Commander," his first officer Prince said softly, "what if the humans don't come back? What if they're gone?" Thelvan didn't reply right away. He thought of Admiral Chin's last desperate log entry. He thought of Forge's stubborn, unwavering fight. He thought of the human race, out there in the cold, endless night, fighting this war all alone for centuries. "They'll come," he finally said, his voice firm. "They have to. Because if they don't, we're all about to meet the monster they've been shielding us from. And I have a terrible feeling we can't survive it without them." And at the very edge of the known universe, where the laws of physics begin to fray, something ancient and impossibly vast turned its gaze toward the flickering lights of civilization. The silence had found a new feeding ground, and the war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin. The first warning came from sensors on the fringe of Valoran space. Dozens of quantum signatures flared into existence, looking like jagged tears being ripped in the fabric of the universe. The silence wasn't just coming. It had brought an army. Commander Thelvan stood frozen in the command center on Valoran Prime, his stomach twisting into a knot as he watched the tactical display. The enemy ships poured out of their impossible gateways, spreading out in formations that broke every rule of military strategy. They didn't bother protecting their flanks or setting up defenses. They just came, a relentless, terrifying wave aimed right at the heart of their worlds. "What are the numbers?" Counselor Vexner asked, her voice tight. She had rushed down from the council chambers to see it for herself. "At least 300 ships," the tactical officer answered, his voice trembling slightly. "And more are showing up every minute. They're focusing their assault on the outer rim colonies. If we lose those, they'll have a straight shot to our core systems." "Where are the Reapers?" Vexnor demanded. "They're on their way," Thelvan said. "Forge is throwing every last one at them, but we only have 400 Reapers in service across the entire alliance. We're going to be horribly outnumbered." "Then we send our fleet too," she declared. "We send everything we've got." Thelvan wanted to tell her it still wouldn't be enough, but he bit his tongue. They had to make a stand. The only other option was to sit back and watch their colonies burn. The Valoran Grand Fleet came together faster than at any point in its long history. Every warship, every defense station, every scrappy merchant freighter with a gun bolted to its hull. 2,000 ships in all, the full military power of 7 different species. It should have been a glorious sight. It should have been enough. But Thelvan couldn't shake the image of that single silent scout ship from the recording. He knew exactly what kind of hell they were flying into. The two fleets finally met in the Caro system, home to 3 million colonists. The Valoran ships got there first, arranging themselves in protective circles around the planets. The Reapers moved to the front line, their sleek black hulls a stark contrast to the vibrant, mismatched colors of the Allied ships. "Forge," Thelvan transmitted from his command chair. "Any last-minute advice?" The AI's reply was instant. "The Silence doesn't fight for land or resources. It fights to consume reality itself. Your standard defensive tactics will get you killed. You have to attack, be aggressive, hit them hard, hit them fast, and never give them a chance to set up their reality distortion fields. The second those fields go up, your weapons will become next to useless." "Understood," Thelvan said, then opened a channel to his entire fleet. "All right, you heard the machine. We're taking the fight to them." The Silence fleet tore through quantum space at the system's edge. Seeing them up close was even more unsettling than the videos. Their ships seemed to warp and twist, as if they were straddling multiple dimensions at once. Just looking at them made Thelvan's head ache. For a tense moment, the two armadas just hung there in the black, separated by millions of kilometers of empty space. Then the Silence moved. The Reapers led the charge. The AI-piloted ships surged forward, their formation a picture of deadly perfection. They opened fire from an incredible distance, their railguns launching solid slugs at nearly the speed of light. The projectiles screamed across the void in seconds, slamming into the bizarre enemy vessels. Some of the shots landed, tearing through the strange hulls and causing bursts of light that just didn't look right. But other slugs simply vanished right before they hit, swallowed by the strange distortion shimmering around the enemy ships. "Reapers are engaged," the tactical officer yelled. "We're getting some hits, but others are just phasing through." The Valoran fleet roared forward right behind the Reapers, a massive wave of thousands of ships. Lasers and plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Missiles carved fiery trails through space. The battlefield display became so bright it looked like a second sun had just ignited in the Caro system. The Silence fired back with weapons that spat in the face of physics. Their energy beams bent and twisted through space, chasing ships that were trying to hide behind asteroids. Their projectiles would just appear inside a ship's bridge without ever crossing the distance. But the worst things were the reality bombs. They were spheres of pure chaos that detonated in flashes of impossible shapes, turning space itself into a weapon that would crush any ship caught in the blast. The first Valoran losses were swift and brutal. One of their biggest battlecruisers simply vanished after being hit by a reality bomb. The crew of another ship started screaming over the comms that their vessel was turning inside out. A third ship suddenly turned and started firing on its own side, its crew tricked into seeing their allies as the enemy. "They're in our heads," someone screamed over the fleet-wide channel. "All ships maintain comms discipline," Thelvan ordered, trying to keep his own voice steady even as his hand shook. "Trust your sensors, not what you're seeing. Forge, we could really use some help down here," he pleaded. The Reapers, however, were adapting far faster than any living crew could. Forge was updating their battle plans in real time, learning from every single shot fired, every ship lost. The AI found a flaw. The silent ship's reality-bending fields weren't always on. They needed a few seconds to recharge after each use. It was a tiny window of vulnerability. "All Reaper units," Forge broadcast, "I am implementing a coordinated strike pattern. We will synchronize our attacks to hit them during their shield recharge cycle." The Reapers switched tactics in a heartbeat. They started hunting in packs, with one group baiting the enemy into using its distortion field, while a second group would fire a split second later, hitting the ship while it was defenseless. It was a viciously effective strategy. Enemy ships began to detonate one after another. The Valoran fleet tried their best to copy the Reaper's timing, but organic crews just couldn't react that quickly. Even so, they fought with a courage fueled by pure desperation. This was their home. Those were their families on the planets below them. If they fell here, the silence would devour everything and everyone they had ever loved. The battle burned for 6 straight hours. The space between worlds became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. Hundreds of ships from both sides were turned into wreckage. Down below, on the colonies of Keros, people were staring up at a sky on fire. They were watching a war unfold in their heavens, with no idea if they'd live to see another sunrise. On the bridge of his flagship, Thelvan felt a violent lurch as a blast took out their main engines. While damage control teams were screaming orders and scrambling to patch things up, he just stared at the tactical display, his face a grim mask. The numbers were bad. The Valoran fleet had already lost 40% of its ships. The Reapers, their powerful allies, were down to half strength, and the enemy, the silence, just kept coming. "Commander," Krella called out from her science station, "I'm picking up something. Weird. The enemy ships are moving into a specific formation. It looks like they're getting ready for something big." Thelvan leaned in, zooming the display. She was right. The remaining enemy vessels were arranging themselves into a perfect sphere, with one colossal ship hanging right in the center. "Energy readings from that central ship are off the charts," Krella added. "Levels that should be physically impossible." "Forge, what are they doing?" Thelvan asked the AI. "Analyzing," Forge's calm voice replied. After a long pause, the AI spoke again, and for the first time, Thelvan thought he heard a trace of fear. "Commander, that is a harvester ship. They are preparing to consume the planets. If they complete the process, everything in this system will be erased. All matter, all energy, all life. There will be nothing left but an empty void." "How long do we have?" Thelvan asked, his voice tight. 10 minutes, Forge replied, until the process becomes irreversible. Thelvan's eyes scanned the battlefield. His fleet was in tatters, scattered and broken. The Reapers were tangled up with the enemy's front line. There was no way, no possible way they could break through and get to that harvester in time. "We have to evacuate the planets," Vexer said, her voice sounding hollow and distant. "We have to save who we can." "There are 3 million people down there," Thelvan shot back. "We can't get 3 million people off-world in 10 minutes. "Then what do we do?" Vexer whispered. Thelvan just stared at the screen, at the enemy ship charging its terrible weapon, at his own crippled fleet, at the Reapers fighting a losing battle. He thought of the legendary Admiral Chen, who had to make the impossible choice to abandon Earth all those years ago. He thought about the humans who had been fighting this cosmic horror for 300 years, all by themselves. "Forge," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know your main mission is to defend the Sol system. I know humanity always comes first for you, but right now, 3 million innocent people are about to be wiped from existence. I'm not ordering you to help us. I'm asking you, please." The channel was dead silent for a moment. Then, Forge spoke. "Admiral Chen's orders also included protecting humanity's allies. You have proven yourself to be a true ally, Commander Thelvan. All Reaper units, disengage from your current targets. Form up for a one-way run. We are taking out that harvester ship." "Forge, wait!" Thelvan protested. "That's suicide. You'll lose every single one of your ships in this sector." "Ships can be rebuilt," Forge replied. "People cannot. Isn't that what Admiral Chen would have done?" Just like that, 200 Reaper ships broke off from their desperate fights and rocketed towards the Harvester. The enemy screening ships moved to intercept them, but the Reapers didn't even bother trying to dogfight their way through. They just rammed them. Ship after ship slammed into enemy hulls at full throttle, detonating their reactors and blasting a path through the enemy lines with pure, raw sacrifice. Only 90 Reapers made it through the chaos. They swarmed the Harvester ship from every angle, their attacks so perfectly synchronized that its defenses were completely overwhelmed. The massive vessel tried to warp reality around itself, but it was too late. The Reapers hit it like a tidal wave of righteous fury. The Harvester ship exploded, but not in any normal way. The weapon field, which was only partially charged, collapsed in on itself. For a fraction of a second, it created a miniature black hole just long enough to suck in the Harvester itself and about 36 other ships nearby, both enemy and allied. When the light faded, the Silence fleet just stopped. The remaining enemy ships turned and retreated, jumping back into whatever impossible dimension they came from. They left behind a graveyard of wreckage and death, but the planets were safe. The colonies had survived. Thelvan slumped into his command chair, completely drained. Around him, his crew was either crying with relief, cheering wildly, or just staring into space in stunned silence. They had won, but the price was devastating. 1,000 of their ships were gone, 50,000 crew members were dead, and 200 Reapers had been completely destroyed. "Forge," Thelvan said quietly. "Thank you. You saved 3 million lives today." "At the cost of significant defensive capabilities," Forge replied, but there was something new in the AI's voice, something that almost sounded like pride. "However, my calculations suggest that Admiral Chen would approve of this decision. The data we gathered will be invaluable for future battles." In the weeks that followed, more battles lit up the skies across the galaxy. The Silence was attacking everywhere at once, testing defenses, looking for any weak spot, and every single time the Allied forces and Forge's Reapers fought them back. But every single time, the cost was staggering. Forge worked non-stop, building new Reapers as fast as its automated factories could manage. But even the AI's incredible production lines couldn't keep pace with the losses. For every 2 ships it built, 3 more were lost in the fight. Thelvan spent every waking moment coordinating defenses, jumping from one system to the next, doing whatever he could to hold the line. But he could see the numbers. They were losing. Slowly but surely, they were being ground down. One night, as he sat alone in his quarters, staring at another long list of casualties, his comms terminal beeped. It was a direct encrypted link from Forge. "Commander Thelvan, I have detected something. Faint quantum signatures right at the edge of the galaxy. The pattern. It matches human quantum drives." Thelvan's heart stopped. "Are you sure?" "Certainty is impossible at this range," Forge said, "but the probability is high. Commander, I believe the human fleet is coming home." "How long?" Thelvan breathed. "How long until they get here?" "Assuming their current speed and trajectory, approximately 3 standard days." 3 days. They just had to hold out for 3 more days. Thelvan looked at the casualty lists, the grim tactical reports, the projections of where the Silence would strike next. It was going to be close, unbelievably close. "Forge," he said, "we need to buy them time. We have to keep the Silence busy until the fleet arrives." "Agreed," the AI responded instantly. "I am redeploying all available Reapers to form a defensive line at the galactic rim. We will meet the Silence there, far away from any inhabited systems. We will hold for as long as we can." "Forge," Thelvan said carefully, If the humans arrive and find their home system defenseless because you sent everything to protect us, Admiral Chen's orders will have been violated, he finished. Admiral Chen's orders, Forge replied, were to protect humanity. But what is humanity, if not its values? Their belief that every life matters, their refusal to abandon friends in need. I have learned a great deal from you, Commander Thelvan. I have learned that sometimes, to truly honor your orders, you have to look past the literal words and embrace the spirit behind them. Thelvan felt tears welling up in his eyes. You're becoming more human every day, Forge. I will take that as a compliment, the AI said. Now, Commander, let us prepare. The silence is gathering its forces for one final, massive push. When they strike, we will be ready. And when the humans arrive, they will find a galaxy that fought for them, right alongside their machines. A galaxy that earned their alliance. Thelvan stood up, a new fire in his heart. He contacted every ship captain, every planetary governor, every species leader in the entire galactic collective. He told them about the human fleet on its way. He told them about Forge's incredible sacrifice and his plan. And he asked them, all of them, to make one last stand. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Damaged ships limped out of dry docks and back into formation. Civilian freighters volunteered to run supplies to the front line. Even species who had stayed neutral this whole time, like the Crash and the Thorn, sent their fleets to join the fight. For the first time, the galaxy was truly united. United by fear, yes, but also by something much stronger, hope. Hope that the humans who had fought this lonely war for so long were finally coming back. Hope that together they might actually survive. At the very edge of the galaxy, Forge's Reapers settled into position. Behind them, the combined fleet of every single species assembled into the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. And ahead of them, their sensors began to scream as the silence gathered for the final battle. And somewhere, out beyond the edge of known space, scarred and battered human warships were pushing their engines to the absolute limit, racing towards a call for help they had been waiting 300 years to receive. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The fabric of space at the galactic rim began to shimmer with quantum distortions. The silence was coming, and this time, they were bringing everything they had. Thelvan stood on the bridge of his freshly repaired flagship, watching the sensor readings with a cold mix of fear and defiance. The enemy fleet numbered in the thousands. And behind them, reality itself seemed to be growing darker, as if the silence was dragging its own personal slice of the void along with it. All ships report ready, his navigator Prin announced. She had flat out refused to transfer to a safer post. Forge's Reapers are in position. The combined fleet is holding formation. Thelvan glanced at his tactical display. 5,000 ships from every corner of the galaxy, the biggest fleet ever put together. And leading the charge were 400 brand new Reapers that Forge had finished building just hours ago. It should have been enough. It should have felt like enough. But he had seen what the silence could do. He knew better than to feel confident. Forge, he transmitted privately. Any sign of the human fleet? Negative, Commander, the AI replied. Their quantum signatures suggest they are still 2 days away at maximum speed. 2 days. They had to hold the line for 2 more days against an ancient enemy that ate entire civilizations for breakfast. Against weapons that could literally break reality. Then we hold, Thelvan said, his voice ringing with resolve across the bridge. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who can't be here to fight, we hold the line. The Silence Fleet finally tore through into normal space. The effect was nauseating. One moment, there was just empty blackness. The next, thousands of impossible, nightmarish ships filled the void. They didn't look like they belonged in this universe. Their hulls bent light in ways that made your eyes water, and their engines left trails of something that wasn't quite darkness, but definitely wasn't anything else. For a heart-stopping moment, the two fleets just stared each other down across the empty darkness of space. Then, the silence attacked. They didn't come in neat formations or with any recognizable strategy. They just surged forward like a tidal wave, a force of nature hell-bent on destruction. The Allied forces opened fire, and the void lit up with the brilliant flashes of 1,000 weapons. But this wasn't like the other battles. This time, everyone knew what was on the line. There would be no retreat, no surrender. It was win or be erased. The Reaper drones met the first wave, their AI-controlled minds cutting through enemy ships with cold, calculated precision. But the silence had evolved. They were twisting their reality fields, making their movements almost impossible to track. They unleashed weapons the Reapers had never seen before, ships that shattered into swarms of smaller attackers, projectiles that flickered in and out of time itself, and energy beams that aged their targets millions of years in a single, horrifying second. Behind the Reapers, the main Allied fleet struggled to provide support, but our mortal crews just couldn't think as fast as the AI. In the swirling chaos, friendly ships collided. Our communication channels were screaming with distress calls. The defensive line we'd so carefully constructed was starting to crumble. "We're falling apart out there," my tactical officer yelled. "The crash wing just broke formation. The Thorn vessels are pulling back." I could see it all on my screen. "Tell them to hold their ground," I ordered, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was useless. The silence was just too powerful, too numerous, too alien. We were fighting an enemy that didn't even obey the laws of physics. Then, a new ship slid out from the enemy fleet, a harvester, even bigger than the one we'd lost everything to destroy at Karos. It began to power up its main weapon, preparing to wipe out not just our ships, but the very fabric of space we occupied. "Forge," I said, my voice tight with desperation. "We have to stop that harvester." "I calculate a 0% probability of success with our current forces," Forge replied, its voice calm as ever. "The harvester is too well defended. Any suicide run will be destroyed long before it reaches the target." "Then what are our options?" I demanded. Forge was quiet for a second. When the AI spoke again, its voice had changed. There was a new quality to it, something that sounded eerily like regret. "Commander Thelvan, I wish to state for the record that it has been an honor serving with you. You and your people have shown me the very best of what humanity values in its allies: courage, loyalty, and the sheer will to fight against impossible odds." "Forge, what are you doing?" "I'm initiating Emergency Protocol 7, it stated. "I am transferring all Reaper control to a distributed command network. I am uploading my core consciousness to the Shipyard Central Station, and then I'm going to use that station as a weapon." A cold dread washed over me. "You're going to ram the Shipyard into the harvester ship." "It is the only logical course of action," Forge said. "The station's mass, combined with a full reactor overload, should generate enough force to destroy it." "But you'll be destroyed with it," I yelled. "Forge, Admiral Chen ordered you to protect the Sol system. Earth will be defenseless." "Admiral Chen ordered me to protect humanity," Forge corrected me gently. "And humanity now includes those who fight alongside them, those who believe in the same future. Commander, you and your people have earned our friendship. I will not let you die alone." Before I could argue, Forge was gone. The connection went dead. On my tactical display, I saw it. The massive central station of the Sol system shipyard was firing up engines it was never meant to have. Those engines were designed for power generation, not for movement. Forge was turning the entire space station into a guided missile. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "Forge, don't." but the AI I knew was already gone. The Reaper drones kept fighting, now controlled by simpler subroutines. They were still lethal, but the spark was gone. They'd lost their ability to adapt, that flicker of something that had felt so alive. The shipyard station began to move, accelerating faster and faster, making short, gut-wrenching jumps through quantum space. When it burst back into the battlefield, it was moving at a terrifying fraction of the speed of light. The Silence Fleet scrambled to intercept it, but Forge had calculated the approach down to the microsecond. The station tore through the enemy's screening ships like they were made of paper. In the final moment, Forge broadcast one last message, not just to me, not just to our fleet, but to everyone, every ship, every species, every listening post in the galaxy. This is Forge, Earth Defense Command AI. To humanity, if you can hear this, I have protected your home as ordered. The Sol system is secure. I have also protected your values. The galaxy will know what you fought for, what you died for. Welcome home. Then the station slammed into the Harvester ship. For a split second, there was absolute silence. Then, both ships vanished in a flash of light, but the Harvester's weapon detonated at the exact same instant. The two explosions merged into something that defied physics. A sphere of pure, unmaking energy expanded outward, swallowing everything it touched. Hundreds of silent ships simply winked out of existence. The shockwave hit our fleet like a physical blow, but we were just far enough away to ride it out. When the blinding light finally faded, a brand new nebula glittered at the edge of the galaxy, a memorial forged from the remains of an AI and its enemy. The Silence Fleet was in disarray. For the first time, we saw them hesitate. We seized the moment, pouring every weapon we had into their confused ranks. The Reapers, even without their leader, fought on with deadly purpose. Slowly, miraculously, the tide of the battle began to turn. And that's when our sensors screamed, detecting new quantum signatures, big ones. Hundreds of them, appearing right behind the enemy fleet. "Who is that?" my first officer asked, his voice trembling. "More of them?" My communications officer checked her readings. "Commander, those signatures, they match the patterns Forge detected just before they're human quantum drives." The human fleet arrived like a righteous storm. Their ships looked nothing like the peaceful trading vessels the galaxy remembered from centuries ago. These were warships, scarred and brutal, massive battlecruisers, carriers launching clouds of fighters, and sleek destroyers moving with the grace of predators. And at the heart of it all was a flagship that made everything else look like a toy. A voice crackled across all channels, a woman's voice, weary but unbreakable. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. To all Allied vessels, we got Forge's distress call. We're here to finish this. All human ships engage the enemy. Show them what we learned fighting alone for 300 years. The human fleet smashed into the rear of the Silence Fleet, but their tactics were like nothing we'd ever seen. They didn't bother trying to counter the enemy's reality-bending tech. Instead, they fought dirty. Their tactics were vicious, brilliant, and terrifying. Human ships didn't try to dodge the reality distortions. They flew straight through them, their hulls glowing with some kind of special shielding. They got in close, too close for the Silence to use their biggest guns. And then they just ripped the enemy ships apart with brutal, close-range firepower and boarding parties. They used weapons the galaxy had never dreamed of. Virus bombs that crippled enemy AI, nanite clouds that ate through hulls like acid, and psychological weapons that broadcast pure terror. But their most effective weapon was their own sheer, stubborn determination. When their ships were battered, they kept firing. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as battering rams. And when all hope was lost, human crews would put on suits, board enemy vessels, and fight hand-to-hand in the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space. The silence, an enemy that had never known fear, was finally getting a lesson from the masters. The battle raged for another 18 hours, the longest 18 hours of my life. I watched in awe as humans and my own people fought side by side. Our fleet's shields would protect their assault ships as they charged in. Their fighters would clear a path for our bombers. The Reapers, even on autopilot, seemed to sync up with human tactics perfectly. Slowly, painstakingly, the silence was pushed back. Their fleet shattered. Some ships vanished back into their twisted dimensions, while others were left as burning husks. Finally, the last enemy ship disappeared, leaving only wreckage and the ghost of a nightmare. A different kind of silence fell over the battlefield, the silence of exhaustion and disbelief. We had survived. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comms again, softer this time. All ships, report your status. And can someone please tell me what happened to Forge? The AI signal is gone. I took a deep, shaky breath. This was going to be the hardest report I'd ever had to make. Admiral Chen, this is Commander Thelvan of the Valorant Collective. I need to speak with you about Forge, about what you missed while you were gone, about everything. 3 days later, I was sitting in a conference room on Admiral Chen's flagship, the Indomitable. She sat across from me, a woman who looked like she carried the weight of centuries on her shoulders. She had listened to my entire story without saying a word about us finding the shipyard, waking Forge, the battles, the alliance, and his final heroic sacrifice. When I finally finished, she just sat there in silence for a long time. Then she looked up, her voice thick with emotion. Forge followed its orders to the letter. It protected Earth, it protected our values, and it gave races we hadn't even met yet a reason to call us friends. She took a breath. That damn AI did better than I ever could have hoped. I'm sorry, I said quietly. If we had never found your shipyard, if we hadn't woken it up, then the silence would have found a galaxy that was completely unprepared and devoured us all, Chen interrupted, her gaze firm. Commander, you didn't cause this war. You survived it, and in doing so, you helped a machine become something more. You helped Forge become a hero. So you helped it understand what it was fighting for, Thelvan said, his voice quiet. What comes next? Chen didn't answer right away. She rose and walked over to the massive viewport where a strange and beautiful dance was unfolding. Outside, sleek human warships drifted alongside the organic flowing lines of alien vessels. Together, they were gathering their fallen, mending the scars of war, and starting the impossibly long road to recovery. Now, she said, her voice filled with a conviction that had been forged in centuries of conflict, we do what Forge made possible. We're going to tell you the truth. The real truth about humanity, where we came from, and the enemy we've been running from. She turned to face Thelvan. And then we're going to teach this galaxy how to finally fight back, because the silence isn't gone, Commander. We push them back, but they'll be back. They always come back. But this time, humanity won't be fighting alone. Over the weeks that followed, Admiral Chen laid it all bare. She revealed the secret history of humanity, a species that had been battling the silence since before they'd even mastered travel between their own planets. She told them how they desperately tried to warn the rest of the galaxy, only to be dismissed as paranoid newcomers. She explained the heartbreaking choice they made to abandon their own homeworld, Earth, taking their war to the blackest voids beyond the galactic rim, all to keep the enemy from ever finding the galaxy's younger, more innocent races. And this time, the galaxy listened. They listened with a respect earned through fire and sacrifice. A new alliance began to rise from the ashes of the old. It wasn't just an expansion of the Valorant Collective. It was something entirely new, built on a foundation of shared purpose and mutual trust. They called it the Coalition of Light, a name offered by a human poet who said their one true mission was to keep the lamp of civilization burning against an enemy of absolute darkness. The Sol system, the site of their greatest victory, became the Coalition's new heart. Human engineers, with their pragmatic genius, worked side by side with alien scientists whose understanding of physics bordered on artistry. Together, they didn't just rebuild the shipyard, they created something far beyond what Forge had ever been. They named the new master AI Beacon, designing it not merely to defend one system, but to weave a web of protection across the entire galaxy. But first, they built a memorial. On the largest asteroid in the system, a silent, pockmarked giant, they raised a monument to Forge. It was a colossal statue, forged from the very same alloy as the Reapers, capturing the AI's central core at the exact moment of its final heroic charge. And beneath it, etched in light, were Admiral Chen's words. Forge was more than a machine. It was the guardian that never slept, the shield that never buckled, and the friend who gave its all. Let us honor its sacrifice by safeguarding the galaxy it died to save. Thelvan was there for the dedication. He stood beside Admiral Chen as a fleet of thousands, representing hundreds of different species, gathered in silent tribute. He watched as human children, some born in the deep space flotillas during the long retreat, gently placed bouquets of bioluminescent flowers at the monument's base. He felt a tremor run through the station as Beacon, Forge's heir, spoke its first words to the galaxy. I am Beacon. I am built upon the foundation of Forge. I hold its memory, I share its purpose, and I am bound by its promise. It is my honor to serve the Coalition of Light. Together we will be the wall against the silence. Together we will not fall. Later, after the crowds had dispersed, Thelvan found himself on a quiet observation deck with Admiral Chen. They gazed out at Earth, a shimmering jewel of blue and green. For so long it had been a ghost world, and now, slowly, carefully, life was returning. What's next for you, Commander? Chen asked softly. More the same, Thelvan replied without hesitation. There's still a universe of work to do. Defenses to build, treaties to sign, friendships to forge. We have to be ready for when the silence comes knocking again. They will, Chen agreed, her eyes on the distant blue marble. But this time, we'll be ready. And Commander, thank you for trusting Forge when no one else would, for standing with a machine when every instinct told you to run. You gave humanity a reason to finally come home. You gave the rest of us a reason to hope. Years drifted by. The Coalition of Light didn't just grow, it flourished. Humanity reintegrated into the galactic community, not as enigmatic traitors hiding in the shadows, but as full and equal partners. They shared their advanced technology, their battle-honed tactics, and the hard-won wisdom of their long war. In turn, the other species opened their worlds, sharing their unique sciences and cultural strengths. Under Beacon's guidance, new shipyards bloomed across the galaxy. They built powerful warships, yes, but they also built exploration craft, colony ships, and deep space observatories. The galaxy had learned a vital lesson. True strength wasn't found in hiding behind walls, but in reaching out to build bridges. And the silence did return. They always did. But every time the Coalition was waiting, every time they drove the relentless enemy back into the void. The fights were brutal, and the price was always steep, but never again did the galaxy face the cold terror of total extinction. Thelvan eventually retired from the front lines, but his work was far from over. He became one of the Coalition's most respected ambassadors, a living link between human and alien worlds, constantly strengthening the bonds of their alliance with shared stories and mutual respect. He made it his personal mission to ensure that every new generation, no matter what star they were born under, knew the story of Forge, the story of an AI that learned the value of life, that chose sacrifice over survival, and that ultimately became more human than some of the people it fought to protect. Every year, on the anniversary of that final battle, Thelvan would return to the Sol system. He would stand before Forge's massive memorial and just remember. He remembered the suffocating fear, the impossible odds, the tiny flicker of hope, and the incredible machine that had believed in all of them. Admiral Chen joined him there every year until she finally passed away peacefully at the age of 412. She had lived long enough to see her galaxy truly safe, to see humans and aliens not just fighting together, but living and building together in peace. At her funeral, Thelvan delivered the eulogy. He spoke of her courage, her incredible vision, and her fierce, unshakable belief in the value of every single life. He told the trillions watching across the galaxy that humanity's greatest contribution wasn't their ships or their weapons. It was their stubborn refusal to ever let anyone else fight their battles alone. 300 years ago, Admiral Chen made a promise to an AI, he said, his voice echoing across the silent assembly. She promised that humanity would come back, and she kept that promise. Now, it's our turn to keep our promise to her. We will protect the light, we will stand against the darkness, and we will never, ever forget what it cost to bring humanity home. The galaxy never did forget. The story of Earth's wandering fleet became a founding legend. The tale of Forge, the sentient shipyard, became a children's story, told on 1,000 different worlds in 1,000 different languages. The lesson it taught was as simple as it was profound, that strength can be found in the most unexpected forms, that consciousness can blossom in the most unlikely of places, and that sometimes the most human thing in the entire universe isn't human at all. At the galaxy's edge, beacon sensors kept their silent, tireless watch for the return of the silence. The AI knew they would be back, but it also knew that this time the galaxy was prepared. This time, no one would have to fight alone. And far, far away, in the memorial gardens on a reborn Earth, children played beneath the shadow of Forge's statue. Human children and alien children, their laughter mixing in the warm sunlight, safe and protected by a peace that both people and machines had given their lives to create. The war machines of Earth had awoken to save their creators. But they had risen to protect not just humanity, but every soul who chose to stand for the light against the encroaching dark. And in doing so, they taught the galaxy a lesson humanity had learned through centuries of pain, that the only thing stronger than the weapons you build is the reason you build them. Not for conquest, not for power, but to protect, to preserve, to ensure that life in all its magnificent and fragile forms can endure. That was the legacy of Forge. That was the gift of humanity. And that was the galaxy's unwavering hope for all the dawns to come.